So um, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about how companies use to perceived value. I'll follow on to how companies perceive value now. I'll talk a bit about how design has become and is becoming more important to the product itself. I'll also speak about a shift that's happening from apathy to empathy. I'll try to connect all of these themes with agile and why agile environments, agile methodologies fit in this environment. And finally, I'll conclude with explaining why the new economy is a social kind of economy. So first off, I'd like to say that old economy was relatively simpler. So every business had various cost centers, revenue streams that were largely separate and distinct. So in this context, Michael Porter's value chain has greatly been used in order to reach a competitive advantage. This would consist in breaking down the value chain in pillars of main and supporting activities that you focus on and try to optimize in order to get or maintain a certain level of competitive advantage. The basis of this theory would be that your company's competitive advantage doesn't rely on another partner to exist. So nowadays, what I have come to witness is an environment where people and companies can no longer get the highest value creation by themselves. So what I mean is that companies are more and more related to each other and increasingly depending on each other. So their value proposition and competitive advantage comes from being well connected and integrated with other companies. So cooperation with external entities has become an increasingly important matter. Since even if you don't always depend on other companies to be successful, you can gain a lot of benefits from the success of your partners. So I've been comparing our current situation, the coronavirus, with the prisoner's dilemma, a classic scenario used in games. For those that don't know what the prisoner's dilemma is, I have a brief explanation here for you guys, which is the idea of the prisoner's dilemma centers around two hypothetical criminal friends. The friends are arrested and faced with imprisonment. Authorities can't present enough evidence to justify a high sentence. So the prosecutor offers a deal. If one prisoner betrays his friend, he will be set free immediately, and the other one will be imprisoned for 3 years. This deal is offered to both friends without giving them a chance to coordinate their actions. And if both friends rat out each other, the sentence will be 2 years for both. And if no one speaks, they will just both do 1 year. So we can see here that if they were able to cooperate, they would both yield 1 year of jail time instead of 3 or 2. So the outcome would be most favorable in this situation. Yet as we cannot predict the other person's behavior, we tend to choose the option that has the best odds of giving me some immediate benefits. So what I think we are observing now in the world is that we are all facing a global prisoner's dilemma, and we are all choosing to cooperate. For example, when all this started, not everyone respected their peers, right? With the coronavirus, some started to impulse buying toilet paper, on all sorts of things. So because they thought it would be something that would just fade away while they sat comfortably in their homes. When people started to notice that if we didn't cooperate, the virus would be here to stay, we all started using protection masks, which kind of reinforces the idea to me that if the game is finite and people never see each other again, our natural tendency would be for us to become selfish and individualistic. Yet these masks don't seem to decrease the odds that I might get infected. Quite on the contrary, they are just very uncomfortable to wear. So why wear them really if I'm not protecting myself? What's the benefit I get? So what they actually do is in the case that I am infected, at least I won't infect the ones next to me. And if the ones next to me also use a mask, I will be infected by them. So this to me seems to be a forced game in which we are playing and we are all playing and understanding that cooperation not only brings the most value to society, but also to the individual. It looks to me like most people have already embraced this thought of cooperating, but still our old political system and leaders don't seem to be quite as prepared to do the same yet. Imagine if as soon as all this started, every country united and said, formally united and said, all right, every other scientist and researcher from each country is to come here, cooperate in a world effort, and here's all of the resources you might ever need, go. It is easy to imagine that the result would be much better than the one we have now. And if people collaborate with each other, then essentially they achieve better results. Actually, someone that reminds me of these ideals is Elon Musk, that as usual goes a little bit further on this and says, true socialism seeks the greatest good for all, and that he does not support the redistribution of wealth to the least productive. It sounds a lot like he's talking about an economical concept, a theoretical concept called the Pareto efficiency. A theoretical state where nobody should get richer if somebody else is becoming poorer. Maybe what we were aiming for is a Pareto equilibrium where you could have a society that's collectively as well off as possible, even if the majority might be a lot better off with a bit of redistribution. So this is something I thought of. Also, we are starting to understand that in the world, even though we have borders and boundaries, we're all connected. So individually and solely, we don't add so much value. Another 21st century change that has been the shift, has been a great shift for us, was the shift from atoms to bits. So in the old industrial economy, value was mostly created through massive capital spending on plants and equipment. And this was a huge barrier to entry that reinforced and propagated competitive advantage through economies of scale. So now you can design your product with a global online community. Those designs can be sent anywhere in the world instantly and without any error, and where they can be fabricated locally. So basically, you can nowadays think globally and act and fabricate locally. So as the virtual world continues to invade the physical one, a new kind of prosperity can be discovered. The focus on design is bringing customers and companies together in order to really understand each other. So it's not only just about if the product exists anymore, it's about if I can use it and if I enjoy the experience. This brings a degree of customization to products that is mainly attainable by cooperating with each other.
Sir, is it possible to ask questions here or no? Or
sure.
how is the format is going?
I was thinking of leading questions in the end, and anything I can answer, but I'm comfortable with you interrupting.
Yeah, so if I may, I see that just it's 10 minutes. So this is very interesting topic about competitiveness and cooperation, and kind of in intuitive level, we feel probably that we should cooperate instead of living competitive life. But what are your thoughts, first of all, where we should start to move the world from competitive to cooperative world? And second one, like, what is your source of just pure human nature on competitiveness, and if there is any positive things in competitiveness, and if there are, and we know there are, how to establish a new belief in human beings that actually we can have the same benefits which we have in a competitive world in cooperative world.
Okay, so I'm not sure I understood the first question, but
the first question, I mean, like, where do we start? It means, how do we start this shift from the world which is competitive to the world where we all collaborate?
Okay, so the way I see it, we already knew that cooperation was better than competitiveness. So what we're doing now, I think we're being forced to cooperate. One of the good things that happened with the pandemic, if one can even say this, is that we are forced to seeing that cooperation is the solution, is the way that we can, and the only way that we can actually solution this problem for now. So I think people, even though they're not naturally inclined to cooperate, sometimes it's much easier to think as one as an individual. I think people are starting to see that seeing cooperation as a means of value, not only to achieve a greater value to society, but also a greater value to you as an individual. So I think the greatest value I can pursue for myself, I can achieve a much higher value if I cooperate with others than if I compete directly and try not to be involved with them.
Yeah, it's more like an individualistic level, but what about like companies and people who is proponents of capitalism? They would definitely support competitiveness, but because they will say that innovation is here because of competitiveness, because we compete to each other and make things better.
Yes, no doubt. Competitiveness, I would say, doesn't lose its place. I would say it just becomes less aggressive and gives place to cooperation to begin entering our world. So I think mainly we won't start competing ever. I think competition, as you said, is what drives innovation. But still, cooperation can make this innovation much more powerful. I think that's mainly what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just wondering how, you know, how we then can implement this, let's say, beautiful theory in real life, and where to start, and it's
Yeah,
a
I think it's
pretty long road.
I think it's quite a long road that we're starting to pave now. But I don't have any answer on how can we shift this on practice. I think mainly this should be thought provoking, and we should all think towards this direction and try to move our companies in this direction of competitiveness and collaboration, as it's proved that if you combine those together, you yield higher values in your company. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I am answering your questions.
I mean, it's not even about right answering the question. We're here all like to discuss and ponder around. So I mean, it's just about meaningful conversation here. So we don't have any like all answers and probably no
Exactly.
answers to all this
Unfortunately.
difficult question. At least like it's positive that we are thinking like towards this way, and let's say you think in this way, and then probably you're gonna act in your life towards this way, and then other people will be inspired by you. So it's already like a big step ahead, you know, what you're doing. So
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's positive. Yeah. If anyone also want to step in and ask some questions.
Cool. So if you want to step in, please let me know and interrupt. I'll try to answer your questions as better as I know. And anyways, you can ask questions in the end if we have time. So as I was saying, I think we're starting to understand that the world is, even though we have borders and boundaries, we're all connected. So we've created this shift from atoms to bits that connected our companies in different ways. So before there was a huge barrier to entry that reinforced and propagated competitive advantage through economies of scale. Now you can design your own product in a global online community where they can be fabricated locally. And as this virtual world continues to invade the physical one, a new kind of prosperity is going to thrive, I think. And the focus on design is bringing customers and companies together in order to really understand each other. And well, it's not only about the product itself anymore, it's about if I can use it and if I enjoy the experience. And this being a degree of customization to products, this brings a degree of customization to products that is mainly attainable by cooperating with each other. So this being, cooperation will be key to thriving in the future. It wouldn't be the only means to success, but it will be a key to being the most successful. So the abilities that will prove most essential to our success or to our ultimate success are no longer technical. Classroom taught left brain skills that economic advances have demanded from workers in the past. So humans, Jeff Colvey wrote in his book in 2015, Humans Are Underrated, and I'll quote, he wrote, "Our greatest advantage lies in what we humans are most powerfully driven to do, for and with one another, arising from our deepest and most essential human abilities: empathy, creativity, social sensitivity, storytelling, humor, building relationships, and expressing ourselves with greater power than logic can ever achieve." So to me, empathy is understanding the needs of others and being able to put yourself in their shoes. And this is the basis of cooperation, really. There is no way to effectively cooperate with one another and collaborate if you don't really understand the other's needs. And so, yeah, in my short work experience, I've had the pleasure of working around Agile and Scrum methodologies, for example. And as I worked with Scrum, which is the methodology I would say I know best, it made me think about the way people cooperate and interact with each other. And one of the key Agile principles is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which very simply means that people talk to each other, they work together, they cooperate in order to create a better product for their customers and faster. Now, Agile comes to answer some problems about previous methodologies, like waterfall, for example, where a strategy was set and after a long period of time and development, value was delivered to stakeholders. But our present needs needed and required a new way to deal with the uncertainty of daily life and changes we had in the predetermined strategy. For value to be delivered continuously, then companies are trying to adapt and form teams that are capable of delivering value in a short period of time. So, for example, in the context of software development, I found that companies have been outsourcing and centralizing their tests in test centers of excellence, for example, which would make a lot of sense if you try to optimize every driver by itself and try to have a single source of contact for testing, for example. In opposition to this thought, in Agile methodologies, testers have been considered as a part of the development team as a whole. So having testers embedded in these development teams is the exact opposite of clustering them in the test center. So as teams are forced to deliver value to stakeholders in a short time frame, a lot of the business components have to be coordinated and cooperating for this to happen, in opposition to only doing their part in order to reach an ultimate goal. And so to me, it is fun to notice that the stark contrast there is to Porter's vision of value chain components. And in his view, by optimizing the disparate parts, you make the whole stronger. Yet today, agility kind of outshines strategy. So we need to think in terms of networks rather than nodes. So clearly, the economy and the world has become more complex. The economic development and technology and globalization have all helped blur the lines of all boundaries, right? To an extent that we need to re-examine our process and our practices and what we do in our companies and in our daily lives. That means we need to break free of the approaches of the past and the basic premise of Porter's competitive advantage, that you can increase the whole by optimizing each of the parts in isolation, has become some sort of untenable. Rather, we need to use platforms to access ecosystems of technology, talent, and information. So at the same time, machine learning and all of these new technologies are quickly replacing human cognitive power, much like machines began to replace muscle power. More and more, what drives value is the ability to collaborate with both humans and machines. Now, I think that is where the main advantage is today. So, why today's economy is a social economy. This is why, with collaboration at the center, at its core of the society. So in the past, we could dominate by accumulating resources and driving efficiency, but now it's agility and interoperability that matter. We need to shift our focus from assets and capabilities to empathy, design, and networking with organizations. So to me, the other thing is, I think everyone already knew that cooperation is the key and gives us and yields high results. As I've said before, this pandemic I think is forcing us to cooperate and see its global value impacting pollution and global warming and lots of other themes. So I would even dare say that the virus we're facing today is not our real long-term enemy, so we are. And the best solution we have so far for our problems would be cooperation. And yeah, these are my themes and all the things I have covered for you. I hope you found this interesting and thought-provoking. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer or discuss it with you. All right, guys. If no one has many questions, this is pretty much it. I'm glad you could join me, and I'll see you on the next run. Thanks, Michael and Unit Ventures for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I hope I can be present and share my thoughts another day.
Thank you.
Thank you.